Getting over isn't easy. It can take years, and in most cases it does. It's a combination of patience and perseverance, not to mention bookers finding the right spot and executing it with a talent that has honed their abilities to a sharpened point. Getting over and mastering one's craft is a slow and complex process, even for those destined to be great. Or is it? I'm SciForWhatCulture.com, and these are 10 secrets to a guaranteed pop in wrestling. Number 10. Getting the tables. Picture the scene. It's a Monday night, WWE is several weeks away from a premium live event, and there isn't a great deal going on, which means the bookers can pretty much phone this episode of Raw in. So for example, it's Dominic Mysterio versus Carl Anderson, no disqualifications in front of a mausoleum of a crowd in some backwoods market. Nobody really cares about the action, a few fans are bored, and a "We Want Tables" chant begins to murmur out. And then one of the stars draws a table out from under the ring, and the fans go bonkers. Doesn't matter how bad a match is, doesn't matter that they don't care about anything else going on. This is a generation of passive fans who have been programmed to go wild at the admittedly very satisfying sound of compressed sawdust exploding. That sounds snarky, but it's not actually hyperbole. At Hell in a Cell last year, it didn't matter that Cody Rhodes, his body bruised internally to a disgusting extent, was entering the most heroic performance of almost anyone's life. When he was about to eat a table, those fans turned feral. Number 9. Removing an article of clothing. A generation of wrestling fans, those who make up a not inconsiderable part of the audience these days, was raised on Hulk Hogan tearing off his yellow vest and conveying his vast superheroic power to the audience. As that audience matured, Vince McMahon realised that booking women to show off their skin would also allow that audience to react. It wasn't just the pimpled N64 playing Sunny D quaffing boys who delighted in this sort of thing amid the Attitude Era. The squeals of women were also heard throughout arenas when Jeff Hardy took his top off to get his demented aerial stunts all the way over. Though nowhere near on the same scale, Angel Garza initially got over as one of the few highlights of the early NXT on USA era by, midway through his matches, removing his tights, throwing them at his foes, and working the rest of the match in trunks. Kazuchika Okada generated one of the loudest pops in the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling by switching from flared trousers to his classic trunks in 2019. It's not particularly big nor clever, but it is relatively over. Number 8. Saying a naughty word. Human beings are simultaneously very complex and very simple. In a warped way, it's almost wholesome or reassuring that people still clutch the pearls or express shock when they hear a certain word in a public setting. Saying the word SHIT on national television has been permissible for several years at this point. Hell, some shows do a lot worse, but it's a no-no in school and in the workplace. When a wrestler in AEW, and it's always AEW, let's face it, says that word, it's guaranteed to generate a reaction. Can they say that? Well, they can, because they do so virtually every single week, but it still evokes a big massive whoa reaction. The word has somehow retained the power to momentarily turn everybody into Mary Whitehouse, and virtually every AEW wrestler is brazen in their quest to wield its power. Number 7. Saying another naughty word. The word crap exists for a very obvious reason. For example, our editor just bleeped me saying the previous curse word, but I can get away with that one scot-free. But it's not very exciting, and so some wrestlers will try their hand at seeing what they can and can't get away with. Jungle Boy reportedly got in trouble for cutting out Christian Cage on TV, and Rick Ross's AEW appearance featured an amazing moment where he called Keith Lee a big MFer, which will never ever happen again. So what's left? Why, the big old B word, of course, the one every woman in wrestling uses to describe each other for emphasis. It's eternal. The hard B sound adds emphasis to the disrespect. It's fun to say and to listen to. A wrestler can get themselves in superb cardiovascular condition and perfect their difficult craft over a painstaking span of years, but most of the time they're not as over as a hard consonant. Number 6. Insulting the local sports team. Certain ancient wrestlers will harp on relentlessly about the lost art of getting heat. And to a certain extent it is lost because people don't really care about much anymore, desensitized as they are by the conveyor belt of horror that is everyday life. Ultimately, a Twitter user is more likely to get a toxic reaction for burying a wrestler than a rival with whom that wrestler is currently feuding. But mostly when the heel mocks the babyface, the reaction is at best performative. With rare exceptions, the psyche of the general public is out of step with wrestling's traditional method of evoking emotion. Unless those fans really feel something when their local sports team gets insulted. Sport is real, closely bonded to the DNA of those who love it as a family tradition and makes up their regional identity. It really hurts when the local team fails. It penetrates the calloused husk developed across this hellscape of a century, and even the most basic heels grasp this concept. Number 5. Saying something reprehensible. Picturing the WhatsApp message threads of wrestlers is an amusing way to pass the time. There'll be some boring nuts and bolts stuff in there as they toss around ideas for their upcoming match, but the etiquette of the insult is something else. They have to delicately phrase what they'd like to say as an insult to avoid situations like the one that famously arose between Eddie Kingston and Sammy Guevara last summer. Now, I would never dream of suggesting that you're out of shape, but this seems to be the sentiment online. You know how those marks get. All that said, can I call you a fat, disgusting blob on TV? It'll get a pop. And a pop it does get, which is why it happens. And the thing is, a wrestler is considered a mark themselves if they don't go along with it too, which is why you hear things like, your beloved family member died recently, and that really gets me off, the taboo of which is a veritable pop generator. Number 4. Executing a Canadian destroyer if you ordinarily wouldn't. In a typical week of pro wrestling these days, the fandom will see a classic or near classic match, an unbelievable unscripted promo, a returning or debuting talent, a crazy table spot, a crimson mask, and promises for yet more great matches next week. The modern wrestling fan is inundated with brilliance constantly across countless facets and genres of the medium. Enjoy the wrestling world as it exists right now because it's almost impossible for it to get any better. So how in the face of this normalized wonder can a wrestler ever hope to get over? There are no you don't see that everyday moments left, unless the wrestler is smart about it. One could always execute a Canadian destroyer, but only if they're one of the 15% of wrestlers who don't include it in their standard repertoire. It's as much crowd appeal as wrestling move at this point, sucking up in the coolest way possible. John Cena should have tried it between 2006 and 2014. He didn't, but the very savvy Dustin Rhodes did. In doing so, he got over in early AEW as an anti-bad faith actor, willing to respect and mix it up with the new generation of wrestlers to get over with the shifting tastes of the fans. See also Bad Bunny, who drew a gigantic pop with the Destroyer at WrestleMania 37 because it's a complex and athletic move he seemingly had no right to execute. Number 3. Bumping on the apron. Okay, well here's the truth of it. The apron isn't the hardest part of the ring. That metal ring post over there is definitely the hardest part of the ring. Still, it's all a work, and commentators have insisted that the apron is more or less a concrete floor for so long that the fandom has long accepted it as a fact. And because fans readily accept its danger, a pro wrestler will bump themselves stupid on the thing knowing that their agony won't be in vain. Spots like this are so popular in fact that AEW configured its very ring in order to facilitate as many apron bumps as possible in relatively safe fashion. The distance between the ropes and the actual brutal edge of the ring is by design sufficiently large enough for wrestlers to work on it as they would the actual canvas. The structure of the ring enables the talent to appear that they have mastered the impressive art of balance, and they bump in most cases without quite smacking their heads against the sharp, awful corner. Moderately worked or otherwise, as much as people complain about excess in wrestling, the apron bump still elicits a guaranteed pop in 2023. Number 2. Kicking out of a finisher. When all else fails, let somebody kick out of your finish. Works every time. This is something that the vast majority of pro wrestlers do in this day and age rather often to chase that high of a molten crowd under their complete control. However, greats like Kenny Omega needn't rely on the trick. The man is such a genius at structuring a match that he doesn't have to do it. He can orchestrate a louder pop by teasing a move, by registering how much the execution of a move is going to be unhinged in its apparent danger before it's even struck. He's perfected the pacing and rhythm of a match so that everything within it matters. Consider the Wrestle Kingdom spot in which he battered Will Ospreay's head through an unforgiving Japanese table. It was actually tame by the standards of the wider match anyway, but the visuals were so stunning and the danger level had been set so high that it registered as nothing less than the babyface fight for Ospreay's life. Since few others are this clever, if they want to make a TV match feel big and turn up the volume, the 2.99 kickout and shocked face hasn't stopped working yet. I can hear Michael Cole's voice bouncing around my brain yelling 2.5, 2.5. And number 1, performing a rare intergender spot. This isn't a defense nor a criticism of intergender wrestling, more an observation. It's pointless to enter that debate, especially in this form, because of course it always explodes into a massive conversation, also read argument. Of course it's all risky. Simulated man-on-woman violence is something sponsors will not tolerate, and when the roles are reversed, the conversation takes a phenomenally bleak turn by those who could do with developing meaningful relationships to grasp a better understanding of how the world actually works. all that stated, it is a guaranteed pop. Rhea Ripley is more over than most WWE acts outside of the top stars, and she frequently takes out men. On the November 28th, 2022 Raw, Mia Yim executed a body slam on Finn Balor to an ultra-rare eruption of a Monday Night Pop. For whatever reason, done sparingly, an intergender spot wakes up the dead. Perhaps that's the point, and something the business can take on as a lesson, even if it isn't applied literally. Wrestling is so excessive in every area between gimmicks, returns, and back and forth high-end action that something the audience hasn't been exhausted by elicits something loud from them. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below. Which of these entries always guarantees a pop from you? And of course, let us know of any others that we missed. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Head over to whatculture.com for more content on the daily. I've been Cypher What Culture, and have a good week.